Hong Kong is under more pressure from China. China will execute an Australian citizen. And why TikTok users are praising China. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. You know, it's been a year since the Hong Kong protests began. Protests first erupted over an extradition bill that would send Hong Kongers to mainland China for trial. I don't know why that would be a problem. China's court system is great. They have a 99.9% conviction rate. I mean, everyone's guilty of something, right? After months of ignoring protesters' requests to get rid of the extradition bill, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam eventually said the bill was dead. But now, the Chinese Communist Party is forcing a national security law on Hong Kong. And guess what that might allow the party to do? Extradite Hong Kongers to mainland China. I see what you did there. Of course, Carrie Lam is ready to go to bat for the people.
Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has called anyone who opposes China's plan to introduce national security legislation the enemy of the people.
She means the enemy of these people. Who do you think put her in power? She wasn't elected by the people of Hong Kong. No, they're the enemy of the people she's sworn to defend. One of the biggest concerns about the national security law is that it essentially makes criticism of the Chinese Communist Party illegal. And, well, there's been months of Hong Kongers criticizing the Chinese Communist Party. But don't worry. A senior Chinese communist official has said the national security law won't be retroactive. Now I know what you're thinking. Chinese officials lie sometimes. But keep in mind, Hong Kong is a city of only 7 million people. In one protest last year, 2 million people marched. I mean, the Communist Party is great at arresting people, but 2 million is a lot even for the party. What's that, Shelley? Right. China has detained 1 to 2 million Uyghurs. I really shouldn't underestimate the Chinese Communist Party. Speaking of the Hong Kong national security law, China's National People's Congress Standing Committee has passed the first draft. The bill covers 4 types of crimes: secession, subversion of state power, local terrorist activities, and colluding with external foreign forces to endanger national security. We still don't know what the law says about those things because no details on the definitions of those crimes or the applicable punishments were given. Now normally, the NPC Standing Committee has to pass a draft law 3 times before it's finalized, which can take up to 6 months. But they seem to be really motivated to get this one done. In fact, my favorite state-run media, the Global Times, reports that the national security law is likely to be enacted by the end of this month, just in time for Hong Kong's annual July 1st protest. Last year, hundreds of thousands marched, and a group of protesters broke into the Legislative Council. Yeah, the national security law is not going to be good for Hong Kong protesters, which is why the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, has pledged humanitarian relief for Hong Kongers. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that the day before, Chinese fighter jets had to be chased off by Taiwanese ones. It was the 3rd time in a week. I guess pushing a war with India isn't enough for the Chinese Communist Party. Did I mention China is going to execute an Australian citizen? This is Karm Gilespie. He disappeared 7 years ago in China. And now, suddenly, he was given a death sentence for drug smuggling. Chinese authorities say he was smuggling 7.5 kilograms of meth. In American units, that's 16 pounds. However, in a social media post that has now been deleted, Gillespie's friends say he was set up. They claim Gilespie was meeting businessmen in China to invest in a storage facility project he was working on. As a sign of good faith in their intentions, they gave him some gifts to take back to Australia with him, brand-name leather goods and luggage that had drugs hidden in the linings. Do I find that believable? Well, do you think it's a coincidence that Gilespie was finally sentenced after 7 years just as China is desperately trying to stop Australia from calling for an investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. And just as some Australian officials are calling for tariffs on China. It reminds me of when Canada arrested the CFO of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, and then China suddenly arrested 2 Canadians for spying. And on Friday, they were formally charged with spying. That's more than 18 months after they were first detained. The BBC says both men were being interrogated for between 6 to 8 hours a day. But don't worry, they have a 0.1% chance of being released. What I'm trying to say is, don't go to China if you're from a country that might get on the wrong side of the Chinese regime, which is pretty much every country now. Even Russia is now accusing one of their own Arctic researchers of spying for China, and they've charged him with treason. Meanwhile, the American Harvard professor who's been charged with hiding his ties to China has pleaded not guilty. I bet he's happy he's not in Russia. DNA! We're full of the stuff. And China has been collecting it from tens of millions of Chinese men and boys. Now, the world's most brutal authoritarian regime has a vast DNA database of its citizens, and a US company, Thermo Fisher, helped them do it. This is not the first time Thermo Fisher has worked with Chinese authorities. Up until February of last year, they were selling DNA sequencers directly to Xinjiang authorities. You know, Xinjiang, where they're harvesting human organs from the Uyghur Muslim minority. And it sure helps when you have DNA sequencers to match clients with non-voluntary donors. Now, what happens if you don't want to give Chinese authorities your DNA? One man was told by authorities they would deprive him and his family of benefits like the right to travel and go to a hospital. And yes, they're doing this to young boys as well. It's okay, little boy. You're in the system now. Okay, that was really depressing. So, here's some good news about the Uyghurs. This week, President Trump signed the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act into law. The law allows the US government to sanction Chinese officials. In fact, Trump is required to submit to Congress a list of Chinese officials who are responsible for human rights abuses in Xinjiang within 180 days of signing the bill. The Trump administration then must sanction those officials by blocking their assets and declaring them ineligible for visas or admission to the United States. The act was passed last month almost unanimously by Congress, showing that once again, the Chinese Communist Party brings us all together. And finally, want to get big on TikTok? Apparently, some users think that praising China can give them a boost, because TikTok is owned by a mainland Chinese company. Check this video out from this Texas songwriter.
So I just found out that the Chinese government's in charge of the algorithm and who gets to get famous. I ain't on no fake or none, but I'm the biggest fan of China. Even this USA hat, shit was made in China. You see that guy? That's my president.
In a few weeks, his subscriber count went from 2,000 to over 90,000. It's not just one guy. Praising China in TikTok videos has become a trend, although most of the videos are more tongue-in-cheek or satirical than genuine. One user made a pro-China video after she suspected her account was shadow banned.
For reasons unbeknownst to me, I've been shadow banned, which is very upsetting. But on a completely unrelated note, I just wanted to let y'all know how much I love China.
She told the Wall Street Journal that after that video, her account was no longer shadow banned. In fact, several users contacted by the Wall Street Journal say they are making videos praising China because they think the videos can help them build audiences on the app. But it's unclear whether TikTok is actually promoting these videos. ByteDance dismissed the theory that its app rewards pro-China content. A company spokesperson called the idea ridiculous. I don't know if we should take their word for it, though. Last year, the US launched a national security review of the app, following concerns by US senators it censored content at Beijing's behest. So if you use TikTok, you might be seeing a lot more of this, and not much of this. Now it's the time when I answer questions from you, my loyal 50-cent army, fans of the show who support what we do through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Today's question comes from John Morgan. I am subscribed with notifications of all videos from China Uncensored on YouTube and Patreon. For this video, I got the Patreon notification, but not the YouTube notification. I'm sure that's just an innocent error by YouTube. Not. John, I see you're really getting the YouTube experience. Yes, it seems like many subscribers aren't being notified when I put out new episodes, even if they have notifications turned on. Why would YouTube be doing this? I'm sure I can't guess. But that does make it really hard for our show. People will write to me asking me why I haven't made any new episodes in a few weeks, and I'll have to tell them, we've been making 4 episodes every week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So, John, I'm glad you got the Patreon notification. That's one of the benefits of being part of the China Uncensored 50-cent army. And for everyone else watching, just make sure you check back regularly for more episodes. Again, we publish every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And you can do the show a big favor by sharing these videos with your friends and family, because the YouTube algorithm isn't doing us any favors. Thanks for writing, John. And for all of you watching, consider joining the China Uncensored 50-cent army. You'll have a chance to ask me questions on the show, and there are some other cool perks as well. Check out patreon.com/China Uncensored to learn more. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.